Hello, my name is Kay Herring, and I welcome you to Candidates Up Front, a public interest program of Berks Community Television, BCTV, and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. Candidates Up Front will introduce voters to candidates running in this year's primary to be held on May 19th. Contested races for this primary are in Pennsylvania Senate District 48 and Pennsylvania House Districts 126, 128, and 130. A primary election is where Democrats and Republicans choose their candidates for the November ballot. There are no ballot questions this primary season, so only voters who have registered as a Democrat or a Republican can vote. To check your voting status, you can go to Pennsylvania's state website, vote.pa.gov. That's vote.pa.gov. And there you can register to vote, change your party designation, locate your polling place, or apply for a mail-in ballot and get lots of other information about the election. To change your party designation, which can be done at any time, follow instructions on that website to update your registration. You may change your party designation even if it is just so that you can vote in this primary. You can also call the local Election Services office at 610-478-6490. The deadline to register is May 4th, and the deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot is May 12th. We are interviewing candidates who wanted to be interviewed in contested races only. For each race, the candidates will get the same questions and will have the same amount of time to answer them. Let's begin.
Hello, my name is Bill Litvin. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Berks County. Today's interview is with a candidate running for the 128th Pennsylvania House District. Two candidates are competing for this office, Republican Mark M. Gillen and Republican David Hughes. The 128th District encompasses parts of southern Berks County, including the townships of Amity, Carnarvon, Douglas, Robeson, Union, Birdsboro, New Morgan, and parts of Cumru and Exeter townships. State representatives serve a 2-year term in the state legislature in Harrisburg. They initiate legislation and vote to create laws. They pass the budget, including taxes and expenditures of the state. They help constituents with issues regarding state government. The salary for a state representative is about $110,000 per year, plus benefits and expenses. Please note that the opinions expressed in this interview are those of the candidate and are not the opinions of the League of Women Voters or of BCTV. This interview is with David Hughes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Hughes, please tell our viewers about yourself and why you are running.
Okay. I'm running against the incumbent because I studied what he was doing, and in 16 years in office, he's accomplished virtually nothing at all. His primary goals never met. About me, I have worked for 40 years in finance and accounting. I have a BS in business administration, a CMA, Certified Management Accountant, Certified Financial Manager. I traveled extensively internationally, working for various Fortune 500 companies, and involved in production, handling negotiations. And I think I have the experience, much more qualified than my opponent.
What are 2 or 3 issues on which, if elected, you feel you can make a difference?
Great question. Number one is property tax. I am laser focused on that. 50 years ago, I heard they were going to get rid of it, and they keep bringing it out of the closet, but doing nothing about it. Absolutely nothing has been done in 60 years. The second thing is second-class township codes. The statutes were written in 1933. They really need to be brought up into the present. And finally, the huge deficit, budget deficits. It's terrible in Pennsylvania. They're projected to be worse by 2030, close to $8 billion. I have a lot of experience in budgeting, and I think my expertise can help the state fix that problem.
On your first day of session, you will vote for the House rules. These rules say party leaders and committee chairs decide which legislation moves forward. What do you think of this system, and would you try to change it?
I think I would try to change it. It might be hard for me to do that in the beginning, but I think it's unfair to potentially block great ideas. I'd like to see the whole House or Senate being able to vote on what moves forward instead of having a potential roadblock in place. So I would vote no.
The House and Senate have been politically divided. What would you be willing to do to get a budget passed on time?
I've done thousands and thousands of budgets in my lifetime, and it boils down to being able to negotiate and reach a compromise. And I would work towards that, definitely introducing myself to those who have opposition to the budget that they're considering. There should be no impediment to getting a budget completed by the proper time. And it's been something that concerns me greatly with Pennsylvania being the last state to adopt a budget last year.
Some people say members of the House should go without pay when they don't produce a budget on time. What do you think about that?
I love that idea. You know, there's nothing more than a great motivator like taking your salary away from you. And I think what they need to do is remain in session until they arrive at a budget. And if taking their salary away would motivate them to get it done on time, I would be all for that.
When the United States counts its population, the census, there are always changes in the number of voters in each district. That needs to be evened out by redistricting. In Pennsylvania, for legislative districts, should that be done by legislators, the current system, or by a nonpartisan citizens group? Whoever does it, should there be rules of what they can and cannot do? Tell us your thoughts.
Yes, I really support redistricting, and I like the idea that we remove partisan politics out of redistricting. It's a great idea. Problem is that the current bill is more of a partisan bill with the Democrats. There's 58 Democrats that support HB 31 and only 2 Republicans, one of them my opponent who supports it. But I am for redistricting, and I would definitely support a nonpartisan committee that was backed by bipartisan legislation, but not 51-2.
Okay, Pennsylvania currently has closed primary elections. Only Democrats and Republicans can vote for candidates. 16% of registered voters are left out. That's about 1.4 million voters in Pennsylvania. Some say all registered voters should be able to vote in the primaries as all taxpayers are paying for it. What do you think would be the best system? What rules would you want to have in place?
Well, actually, the primaries are conceived to allow the Democrats and the Republicans to pick their candidates. So it's really a party type of responsibility. If you're independent, you may not care one way or the other for a Democrat or a Republican. If you did, you'd be registered one of those 2 parties. So in the primary, I'm not sure it's an important issue, and they do get to vote in the general election, which is really the big one.
The United States Constitution gives states the power to run elections. In Pennsylvania, the state gives the administration function to the counties. Recently, the U.S. government has tried to have more say in how local elections are run. What are your thoughts on which level of government should handle elections?
I believe that the Constitution gives the federal government certain rights, and the ones that are not given to them, they belong to the state. And since we do have the right to run our own elections, it should remain that way. And keep the federal government's hands out of our local elections.
Do you think we have the right balance of powers between states and the U.S. government? Where should they work together? Where should states have full authority? Which functions should each control?
Oops,
sorry.
Could you say that question again, please?
Sure, no problem. Do you think we have the right balance of powers between the states, or the state, and federal government? Where should they work together? Where should states have full authority? Which function should each control?
Okay. I believe that the Constitution defines what powers the federal government has and what powers the state has. This is an area that should not be ambiguous, and I think we need to make sure that the federal government doesn't overreach their powers and affect our local governments here.
Okay. Data centers use significant amounts of electricity and water. Some say this will have a negative impact on local communities. Others say they will not. What are your thoughts on this? Do you feel we need special laws to protect local communities?
Well, we need laws and ordinances to protect us, but I think the problem might be overblown because there is legislation requiring data centers to provide their own electricity, and the water issue is another problem, but I think they'll be able to solve that. We're going to have problems with all the future technology that is coming our way, but data centers will also provide jobs and taxes, revenue tax for the state.
Our Pennsylvania Constitution requires the state to provide 50% of the money needed to run our schools. And while the state has increased school funding in the past several budgets, it's still way below 50%. This shifts the burden to local property taxes. How would you address this taxing issue? Would you increase the income tax, the sales tax, or create new taxes?
It's an interesting problem, and it is a real burden to all taxpayers, especially in Berks County. And before I would shift any responsibility to sales tax or income tax, we need to eliminate the inefficiencies. And I'll give you a great example. In Berks County, we have about 60 tax collectors. And we really only need one tax collector, and that's the Berks County Treasurer. If we eliminated all of these tax collectors, we would free up $1 million a year in property tax receipts. On a bigger scale, if we address the school district problem, we could save as much as $1.2 billion. Once we start eliminating the inefficiencies, the spending of property taxes, then we can start talking about what would the sales tax increase be? What would the income tax increase be necessary? I would say that the sales tax is a fair tax to distribute the property taxes. The income tax, we need to be careful that it doesn't burden low income and retirement people. We need to protect them from that. So fix the inefficiencies first.
So you're saying consolidate the school districts in the Commonwealth?
That's one plan that I've heard about. For example, we've got 500 school districts. Maryland and New York, they have one school district for every county. If we went from 500 to 67 school districts, the estimate is that we would save $1.2 billion. The problem is the will isn't there in Harrisburg to do that. And I look at this from a perspective as an accountant, economically. The schools themselves will not change. Teachers won't recognize much of a change. There's a lot of special interests that would try to prevent this from happening, but it's a reasonable change to save an awful lot of money.
Pennsylvania currently has a flat rate income tax. Whatever your income, you pay the same percentage. Should we change to a graduated tax where people with more income pay a higher percentage?
No, please do not change that. I lived in California where they have a graduated income tax, and it's actually chasing people out of the state. I think it's reasonable to have a fixed income tax, 3% or so, taking from all levels of income. It's fair. Those who make more pay more. So I think it's a great program, and one of the reasons why I moved back to Pennsylvania, my home state.
Okay. Well, we're reaching the end of our interview, so please give us your closing remarks. You have a couple minutes.
Okay, great. Yes, like I said, I'm a businessman. I am not a politician. And I'm running because I want to see some things get done, like property taxes. I will be laser focused on that. We'll come up with ideas that will get us moving to the right direction. For example, I don't want to see anyone lose their home because of property taxes. Estimates were that 10,000 people a year lose their homes. We need to incorporate something like Oregon and Texas does. And what they do is they haven't eliminated property taxes, but what they've said was if you're in a situation where you can't pay and you might lose your home, the state will carry that liability until you either sell the house or you die. So you'll never lose your home as long as you're alive. I think that's a fair thing that I would push for immediately. That would be one of the first things I would work on if elected to the General Assembly. And I have the expertise, a lot of travel. I'm looking at things, the problems in Pennsylvania that are looked at in a different way because I've traveled quite a bit. I've lived out of Pennsylvania for a long time. So I'm like a third party that's seeing these problems sometimes for the first time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hughes, for sharing your views with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
My pleasure. The Pennsylvania primary election is May 19th. On your ballot will be candidates for state and federal legislative offices. In Pennsylvania, a primary election is where Democrats and Republicans choose their candidates for the November ballot. There are no ballot questions in Berks County this primary season, so only voters who have registered as Democrat or Republican may vote. You will find candidates' upfront interviews on BCTV and its website and YouTube page. Remember, Pennsylvania's primary election is Tuesday, May 19th. Make a plan to vote. For more information about candidates, go to the League's online voters guide, vote411.org. That's vote411.org. If you have other questions about election procedures, contact Berks County Election Services at 610-478-6490. That's 610-478-6490. And thank you for watching Candidates Up Front.